I'm Sierra Bells. Welcome to my channel, Learning Builds Life. Today we are going to talk about the flexibility of the scientific process. So, let's begin. What is all about the flexibility of the scientific process? Well, we have to get one thing really clear. How do scientists answer questions in science? Well, there is a scientific method to answer these questions. Scientific method. But this method is not always followed in all cases. Like, for example, in one case, a scientist can start with one experiment. An experiment is a scientific test done in controlled conditions. One scientist may start with an experiment and may go on with it. But again, when he goes forward in the experiment, he suddenly notices that I need to go back and check, like I need more preliminary observations. Preliminary observations might have been needed. This is one case which can happen. Like, I am starting with one experiment, but later on I see I have to go back and do some more observations. In another case, we don't start with an experiment. We do the observation, and we keep on doing observations, and then we do the rest of the things like testing hypotheses, etc. So, first observation, then experiments. And not just starting one experiment without doing anything, and then later on we realize that we have to do some observations. Hence, in many cases, we don't follow this scientific method, but to answer questions in science, we have used this scientific method. One very common example is we didn't know how genes encode proteins until we knew the structure of DNA. An event which had occurred in 1953. We knew the structure of DNA in 1953. Now, I will show a diagram which represents this scientific method, but before that, you may take a look at the board and see the different cases which we come across in science. Moving on to the diagram. Now our diagram. The center of all of these questions in science is forming and testing of hypotheses, and that is what goes in our center. Forming and testing hypotheses. And there are a few steps involved here. Forming and testing hypotheses. Let's see what the steps are. First, we make observations. After doing that, we do an experiment. We gather and analyze. We gather data and analyze results. And another very important step is predicting results before we analyze them. This is the center of everything. Now the rest of it. Making observations. In making observations, first we make the observations. We ask questions. And additionally, read the scientific literature. Read the scientific literature. This is about making observations, community analysis, and feedback. Community analysis and feedback. What are the steps over here? Well, there is feedback and reviews from peers. Reviews from peers. Replication of findings. And publication. And finally, we have, after publication, we have consensus building. Lastly, social benefits and outcomes. And outcomes are developing technology, along with that, informing policy. Informing policy, building knowledge, and solving problems. In forming and testing hypotheses, when we interpret the data, then we can see the data may support a hypothesis, contradict a hypothesis, or can be inspired by a revised or a new hypothesis. Inspired by a revised or new hypothesis. Now you may take a close look at this diagram, which tells us about the scientific method. Hope you enjoyed this episode, and please like, share, and subscribe my channel, and stay tuned for more videos. Thank you.